The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
On the phone with us right now, a great guy who I've gotten a chance to meet, actually even in person, which is unusual in this business. Sometimes we have quote-unquote friends that we only see or hear on the air. But his name is John Reid. He ran, unfortunately, unsuccessfully for lieutenant governor in the state of Virginia last year, but he's not given up the message. He's doing the Reid Report right now, which will give us some details about how you can find that. And also a longtime news anchor. And, you know, when people who have been news anchors for a gazillion years decide to run for office, it usually means that they really want to make a difference. They're not looking to be just some kind of corporate crony. So, John Reid, welcome to the program. The first thing I want to talk to you about is, again, because I'm trying to remind people that negativity doesn't always have to lead the news. So I'm going to basically say something positive here, but it's all a little bit negative. I have to say I would like to see more excitement and participation in our upcoming 250th anniversary. This is an amazing country. And the one thing I'll say is there seems to be so many people using this 250th anniversary to not only criticize the current president, but to remind everyone of the things they don't like. And I keep telling people, think about it as a birthday for your child. And your child isn't perfect, and there's things that you're working on. They're not doing their homework. They don't do so great in keeping their room clean. At the birthday party, when you're giving them the cake and the presents, that's not the appropriate time to list your complaints about your kid. So I feel the same way about this weekend. This is not the appropriate time for you to list your complaints, right, John?
This is when you talk about how much you love whatever it is you love, whoever it is you love. And the great thing about America is that all the things that people are beating us up about from the past, we've fixed. You know, I mean, really, the number one thing I hear in Virginia, because there is a large group of people that is obsessed with slavery. You know, I understand wanting to study what happened here in Virginia. The Civil War occurred here in Virginia. There is a lot of history to unpack here. We have resolved these problems, and yet it's an emotional manipulation for political and cultural reasons that so many people keep bringing that up as if it's a contemporary issue. You know, I didn't vote for Barack Obama, but I swear to God, the night he got elected, I was in Washington, D.C., and I was the only person who wasn't honking the horn and cheering and so excited. And I thought, well, you know what? At least this election will allow us to finally turn the page on the racial animosity and the accusations of racial discrimination in America. I took some comfort in that, even though I had voted for McCain. And the exact opposite seemed to happen.
That's right.
It ignited the hostility of people who just will not move past a very critical analysis of the past and allow us to enjoy a period of time where everybody has an opportunity for prosperity and success. It's remarkable. And I think you're right. Let's take this weekend and remind everybody of how great it is to be a part of this American experiment, especially at this moment.
Yeah, and it's so many great stories. You know, I'm doing a program here on WABC, and many of the stations that are listening are also part of our network, and where you hear this program every Sunday night called Freedom 250, The Decisions That Made America. And this is a program I put together so that it wouldn't just be this date in history, this, and this happened. I'm focusing on specific decisions where a person, usually an individual, but sometimes a group of people, could have gone a different way, and they went this particular way, and how it made America. In some cases, not for the better. For example, you know, talk about the history of slavery. I did an entire half hour about the Dred Scott decision, which was the wrong decision, or at least born out of a wrong situation we had in the country. So it's not all, it's the decisions that made America at the time and also going forward. And it's also not just politics and war. I've done cultural stuff too, like the decision not to fire Al Pacino from The Godfather after the first 2 weeks. He, you know, making one of the greatest cultural contributions to the world in The Godfather, with the greatest American film of all time by a long shot. So things like that. And this is the time to focus on that. What were the decisions? You know, George Washington's decision to take on a presidency that would not give him absolute power and then to voluntarily leave the presidency is a really important discussion to have in this country. And there have been some, even for example, in the musical Hamilton, they really focus on that. One of the songs really focuses on his voluntary step down from power. I give Lin-Manuel Miranda a lot of credit for that because I know the cast members in all their interviews couldn't stop talking about Washington as a slaveholder, and they refused to even talk a little bit more about their own performances, which was annoying. But I give that's an amazing decision that really sets us apart. We don't have kings who were really leading the world abdicating necessarily, except for that idiot Edward VIII who was not all there and was a Nazi supporter, abdicating because he wanted to marry some crazy woman from Baltimore. I'm not including that because he really wasn't fully, this was, by that time, he was not really the leader. Obviously they had a prime minister and a parliament that really ran the country. So my point is that's something to focus on. And again, this is the birthday weekend. This is not the time for you to tell, this is like at your wedding, in the exchanging of vows, with the spouse saying, we're getting married, but you're a terrible person. Yeah, it's just like it's.
Remember that time when you got drunk and you insulted me when we were in Cabo and we broke up for a month? Yeah, you don't do that. Listen, America, there are amazing stories of perseverance and success and of failure and of generational change that I think are worthy of discussion right now. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of days. And I'm going to be watching the people around me because, like you, I'm really excited about this. I got the T-shirt. I've got 2 or 3 baseball caps. I live in Richmond, Virginia, about 2 hours south of Washington. I'll be going to Washington on Saturday morning, and I will be on one of the rooftops for the largest fireworks show in the history of the world that night. I'm very excited about that. That's kind of a gimmick, but hey, it's cool. I'm excited about it. And I've been thinking about and talking on my program about my great-grandfather who immigrated to the United States from Ireland legally through Ellis Island, where I was last weekend when I pinged you and said, "Hey, man, I'm in your city."
Yeah, I'm glad you visited there. That's a great. By the way, that's a great museum. It's a museum now, obviously, and it's worth
everybody
going to.
should visit it at least.
It's really good.
And I climbed to the top of the Statue of Liberty to the crown and made a point of doing that. This is a moment like a birthday for somebody in your family to revisit all the great things and the hope that you have for the future. And if someone can't join you in that on the 250th birthday of the country, that's somebody you need to keep an eye on because we should all be optimistic, even those of us who disagree on some political issues. This is an opportunity to celebrate, and we should take it.
Yeah.
The Marine Toys for Tots foster care program is bringing hope to children who need it most. Every 2 minutes, a child enters foster care, often with only a small bag of belongings. More than 400,000 children face trauma and uncertainty, many before age 8. This May, during Foster Care Awareness Month, Toys for Tots is creating Room for Joy. In 2025, nearly 375,000 children received comfort through toys, books, and essentials, reminding them they are not alone. Donate now and change a child's life.
We're talking to John Reid, who now is the purveyor of the Reid Report. Before I ask you the next question, tell everyone how they can... The Reid Revolution.
Provocative, the revolution.
Yeah, the Reid Revolution. So tell everyone how they can log into that and see that first, before I ask you.
Well, I'm doing it every day, Monday through Friday. It's on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, about an hour and a half every day. Sometimes it's a long monologue for me, kind of talking about the news of the day. Now, why should you care what some random guy who ran for lieutenant governor of Virginia has to say? The one thing I'll tell folks in New York, where you got a smorgasbord of media opportunities, is that I was communications director in the United States Senate for George Allen when he was on the Foreign Relations Committee. I have traveled to 116 countries around the world, worked in many of them when I ran international public relations for a big government firm out of D.C. I think that I bring a unique perspective on this as the son of a politician and now I guess a politician myself. That one thing that you learn when you're doing talk radio is you damn well better be authentic. You better tell the truth because you're talking to the same audience 3-4 hours a day. And if you're a liar and if you're a fake, they're going to figure it out really quick. And I pride myself on shooting straight with the audience and sharing stories and trying to back up my observations and opinions. And I hope it's something different than you'll find anywhere else in media.
I think it is. And you left out your years as a news anchor. I think you were at WRIC in Richmond. Am I correct in that?
Oh, yeah. The ABC TV station. I was the only conservative in the newsroom, man. They hated me. And I got great ratings because the audience loved it. But the newsroom despised me because, at that time, Richmond was the murder capital of the United States by population. And I kept saying, hey, guys, why don't we show people where the murders are happening? It's not like every neighborhood is getting pinged here. And I was told we cannot do that. That would be racist. And see, I was in my 20s at that point. That was my first realization that there is a cover-up happening in this country based on race where you can't even share objective data because someone will take offense. And I fought like hell in that newsroom to make sure that the audience knew what was going on. And I've continued to do that in a whole bunch of different roles since. And we've got to have more people who will stand up for the truth, objective truth, not just opinion, but objective truth. Let's get that out there so people can see what's really happening.
Yeah. To me, this is also the reporting on crime that I do think. Yeah, listen, you were in local news, so I think you're going to agree with what I'm talking about here. And I'm not talking about murders. In murder in local news, you got to cover that. I understand that.
Yeah.
But local news still, even now, but certainly, even over this last overall years when, let's say, my lifetime, which still, even though we've seen this rising up of crime in the last few years, we're still nowhere near, especially here in New York. We are nowhere near where we were in the bad old days of the late 70s and early 80s. I know because I lived through it. And I can tell you, you would not have known that. If you turned on the local news in 1977 and turned on the local news in 2018, it was the same thing. It was as if we were just killing and murdering and robbing all day and fires and the whole thing. And to me, the only thing to do, and I feel the same way, by the way, even about traffic reporting, you're going to laugh at me. Why don't we sit down with the traffic reporter? Why don't we sit down with the crime reporters and say, hey, can you tell us some of the trends here? Let's do a bigger picture on this right now. Where are all the murders happening? Where is the bottleneck every day in the traffic? No one ever sat down the chopper reporter and asked him that or her, which drive me crazy because commuting is a huge part of American lives. And no one ever bothers to sit down. They say, you know what? You've been following traffic through the chopper for 30 years. What would you recommend? And I would say the same to a beat reporter on the local news. You've been following this for 30 years. What would you say is the issue? And no one ever bothers to do that. And we need to do that because the people who are being victimized, I talk about this all the time, John. Yes, it's true. Black men in this country are 5 times more likely to be arrested than a white person and more likely to be falsely arrested in some cases or detained. But black people are 12 times more likely to be the victims of a crime. What kind of maniac cares more about column A than column B? I care more about column B. And if fixing column B means we've got to arrest more people and be stricter with our law enforcement and not lenient, then I'm all for it. And only someone who has been out on the beat and seen all these things and hopefully not become too desensitized can understand what I'm talking about.
You can really lose your heart for people if every single day, whether you're a cop or you're an ambulance driver or you're a reporter, all you see is the bad stuff. Or you can use it to inform yourself going forward. And, I really did appreciate your introduction. I left my talk radio program. I was the morning drive guy for 8 years at the big news talk station here in Richmond. And, they wanted to extend my contract. And I said, guys, I can't just keep talking about this. I have got to be one of the people who's trying to change the situation on the ground. And I have a wonderful platform as a talk show host, but running for lieutenant governor might give me the opportunity to minimally influence and inform the voters. And if I'm lucky enough to get elected, influence the laws in Virginia. Now, the unfortunate thing is Virginia is a pretty purple state. It's probably a D plus 3 or 4 state. And it was a mess last year. Republicans got wiped out, myself included. But I'm still very proud of stepping away from the broadcast booth and saying, nobody else wants to do this. Everybody else assumes we're going to lose. I'm going to give up my salary and let me take a shot at talking to the voters and trying to right some of the wrongs that I've identified with this career in journalism and elsewhere. And, I wasn't successful last year, but that doesn't mean the game is over. Got to stay in it,
And I'm Jake Novak in for Rita Cosby. We're talking with John Reid from the Reid Revolution, former lieutenant governor candidate in Virginia, talk radio host down there. And, full disclosure, I used to live in Richmond. I used to live in Norfolk. I used to live in a town called Roslyn. There's a Roslyn on Long Island here, but this is Roslyn with 2 S's, and that's in Northern Virginia. John, I wanted to wrap up last couple of minutes I have with you to talk about a little bit about the midterms here. You're an expert on what I think a lot of people can expect. I think there's a lot still in motion with these midterms right now, but what's your outlook for them right now? And don't hold back. You certainly don't need to sugarcoat anything for us.
Yeah, look, I'm glad that we're not having the midterms today. I think we've got some problems on our hands at the moment. I think the president recognized that when he decided to make, personally, I believe some pretty dramatic changes in the way he was dealing with Iran. I'm not on board with the changes, but he's the president and it's his legacy on the line, our lives on the line, but his legacy on the line. So, and he's my president, so I'm going to support him. But he does need to come up with a way to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, to lower the price of gasoline, which I think will help lower a lot of prices or at least stabilize the prices, and remove this angst that seems to have taken over across the country. I mean, Americans clearly are sending a message that they don't like these wars, even if they're short. I would second guess whether the president should have gone a little harder about 2 months ago and gotten rid of another generation of the leadership of Iran and then dealt with whoever crawled out of the rubble. I think that probably would have been a better plan, but we are where we are now, and we've got maybe 2 or 3 at most more months for him to get all of this stuff under control. I'm excited that he's having the convention in Dallas. I think that will give him an opportunity to remind people of the successes so far in this second term of his presidency. And there are a lot of them, and he needs to be able to tell that story without the media blocking him. So we've got some successes, but if this were being held today, I think we'd have a big, big, big problem on our hand. The one other thing I'll say, the Democrats are helping us by embracing the socialists.
Yeah.
Because a lot of Americans, like me, and I guess like you, were raised, you start hearing about socialism and communism, total turnoff. Hell no, we're not going there. So
right.
That's good.
Yeah, and I think in New York's New York's going to go Democrat. It's the swing states where they can run against the Democrats as brand X socialism. John Reid from the Reid Revolution. Thank you so much for joining us.